So let's be honest for a minute. Parenting is like the one job where the qualifications are optional. Training is virtually non-existent. Feedback mostly comes in the form of eye rolls and tiny little messes all over the house. I actually told Eva earlier this week the same thing. She had spent the night at a friend's house where she had a blast there, but in the process, she got no sleep. And so the next day, she was like, it was awful. She was an emotional mess for the entire, like, she was crying, and she would literally, as she's, like, we were walking at camp together, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but she's like, oh no, and then she just starts crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? I don't know, but I can't stop crying. And in the middle of one of those moments where she couldn't stop crying and didn't know why, I had to confess to her because it's like she wants me to fix it. And I had to tell her, listen, you're going to have to take it easy on me. I have never raised a 10-year-old girl before, right? And so we're going to have to learn this thing together because I've never done it before. You've never been a 10-year-old girl, and I've never raised a 10-year-old girl. So we're going to, and people keep telling me, and you guys probably know what this means, but other well-trusted adult women keep telling me that she's getting close. I'm like, I'm not ready for that stuff. I sort of challenged Liz to help brainstorm with me things we never thought we'd say as parents. I tried to organize them by theme, and so here's kind of an organization of our thoughts. Stop licking your sister. Stop licking the windows. Stop licking the walls. Stop licking your nose. Right? Never thought we'd say those things. Why did you take your pants off? Where are your pants? Where's your brother's pants? Stop talking. Please stop talking. Why are you still talking? And where's Daniel's talker? All things that we never thought we'd say. This one actually came from Liz. Your fingers don't belong in your nose. Your finger doesn't belong in your sister's nose. Your finger does not belong in my nose. Right? Those are things that never thought we'd have to say as parents. Liz seems to remind the kids fairly often, and she came up with this all on her own. She tells the girls this all the time. God gave you a magnificently wonderful brain. Please try to use it. I think it's fairly obvious that while there are joys in parenting, it can be a messy job. Even through the chaos, I think one thing is clear though. God doesn't call us to be perfect parents, just to be purposeful parents. In Deuteronomy 6, he gives us a blueprint, not for raising perfect kids, but for raising kids who know and love him. And so this morning, I want to talk about the parent's priority. And spoiler alert, here's the priority in a nutshell. A parent's priority is to gradually transfer a child's dependence away from them until it rests completely on God. Now, let me say that again. The priority of every parent is to gradually transfer a child's dependence away from ourselves until it comes to completely rest upon God. Now, our job as parents is to shape the hearts of our children through three biblical commitments that we see in Deuteronomy 6. And so let's talk about them today. And number one, as parents, our priority is to cultivate a passion for God. Look in your Bibles at what we find in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verses 4 and 5. But Moses is speaking to the entire Israelite nation, and he commands this. Look there with me. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart." You see, long before God said a word about raising kids, he talked about the precedence of loving Him first. And that's where the priority of every Christian has to begin. Whether you're a parent or not, every Christian, there's like a foundational moment where we choose to love God above all else, to love God with our everything. And like every other facet of life, parenting starts with a personal devotion to God. One preacher famously said that faith is not only taught, but it's caught. Man, I tell you, I need to be reminded of that from time to time. You see, I cannot pass on to my kids what is not already strong in me. Right? I can't give them what I don't have. I can't expect them to have a deep passion for God if they don't first see that same passion in me. You know, there's probably not too many songs written about the art of parenting. One of the most effective, in my opinion, and most sobering songs that I know of, it's actually a secular song. I might be pronouncing the name wrong. Some of you older folks could help me. Is it Harry Chapin? Or is it Chapin? How do you say his last name? Chapin. Thank you. You guys probably know what song I'm talking about, right? Cats in the Cradle. Like, most of us probably know the song, but the harrowing lyrics that play over in my mind come toward the end of the song as the old dad realizes, my boy is just like me. Right? My boy is just like me. You see, if there's one universal truth about all kids, it is that they are experts at imitating parents. They are magnificent at imitating us. And sometimes that can be a good thing, but other times that may not be such a good thing. In either instance, moms and dads, we need to recognize that our kids are going to catch our passions long before they catch our preaching. Right? They're going to catch the things we do long before they catch what we say. Then they're going to follow our conduct before they ever begin to obey commands. And so even if they hear us talking that good Christian talk, if they don't see us walking the right walk, they'll most likely either do what we do, or later in life they'll just resent us for being dishonest to them. You see, do as I do, do as I say, not as I do. And that sounds cute. And it's terrible advice for us as parents to try and give our kids. It doesn't work. They're going to do as we do. You know, we often think that the foundation of parenting is kids. Like parenting begins, and I mean this is true, like I didn't become a parent until Daniel was born, right? And so parenting, we think that that's the foundation of the job, is in our kids. And the job of parenting revolves around our kids. But Jesus actually in Scripture flips that, right? And confirms that our relationship with God is really the foundation. And if we want to raise children who love Jesus, then we have to model for them what it means in us for us to love God above all else. And this isn't in my notes, and it's kind of a challenge, and I know it's not a popular, it's very biblical, very unpopular. And that is that in the list of priorities, again, I want to be careful. I want to make sure that speaking truth in love. But in the list of priorities, it is God, marriage, children. But when we have kids, children go first. All so often. We prioritize our kids above every other relationship we have, and we think we're doing that for them. What we're really doing is for us. Because if we were really doing it for them, we'd have our priorities straight, and God would be first. Have you ever considered the impact that just coming to worship on a regular basis has on your kids? Consider the statistics. If both mom and dad attend church regularly, 72% of children will continue to attend church regularly as adults. If only mom attends, just 15% will continue into adulthood. Here's a challenge, dads. Well, this is interesting, but it's true. If only dad attends church, 55% would continue. But if neither mom nor dad attend church, and dad don't take kids to church, statistically speaking, only 6% of kids will begin to go to church as adults. See, I think there's wisdom in this post that seems to have been making its rounds on Facebook. Perhaps you've seen it before. It's this idea that parents who treat church as optional shouldn't be surprised when their kids treat God or treat Jesus as unnecessary. So parents, what portion of your heart belongs to God? Can we really say that we love God with our all? You see, the greatest legacy we can leave is not in certain parenting techniques, and maybe we could spend a lot of time. You probably won't hear that from me a whole lot during the 4 weeks that we teach this. Probably not going to have a whole lot of techniques in parenting. What I do want to instill is that you have a passion for Christ. Because maybe that could be the greatest thing you instill in your kids, is the passion you have for Jesus. See, our kids need to see that our love for the Lord is not just a weekend event. It's a way of life. Number 2, as parents, our priority isn't just to cultivate a passion for God, but it's also to communicate the principles of God. Consider how Moses continued in verses 6 through 9 of Deuteronomy 6 in our Bibles. Continuing in verse 6, it says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart." Verse 7, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates." See, this goes beyond just a commitment to making it to regular attendance on Sunday morning. The idea is that every opportunity, right? Every opportunity is a great opportunity to talk about Jesus with our kids. You see, communicating God is to be a normal part of the natural rhythms of daily life. Whether we're sitting down, whether we're walking, whether we're laying, whether we're rising, we are raising them up to know Jesus better. It's true that faith must be caught, right? That's what the famous preacher said, but that doesn't mean that faith should still not be taught. See, it's also true that faith is not just caught, but it is and must be taught. You know, one of the greatest potential opportunities may have turned into one of the greatest travesties of the American church. It really began probably in the 70s, but it became extremely popular in the early 90s as larger churches began creating youth ministry teams. The desire and the opportunity seemed great to reach youth on a more intimate level, bringing them to a deeper passion for understanding of who Christ is through relevant and engaging ministry that was built specifically for kids at their age. But what began as a wonderful opportunity to deepen the faith of our kids turned into an excuse for parents to outsource the responsibility of raising our children in the love and admonition of the Lord. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I love youth ministry. I think youth ministry can be an extremely effective tool to help kids grow in Christ. I spent 7 years in youth ministry before transitioning into preaching ministry. Some of the most influential men in my life have been youth ministers. But a severe problem has arisen As parents begin to think that the spiritual development of their kids could be surrendered to a church youth ministry program. Listen, that kind of thinking is lazy and it's sinful. Christian parenting is about modeling Jesus to our kids on a 24/7 basis. You see, the first church your kids need is what happens at home. But parents are the first preachers that your kids will receive. The dinner table is the first pulpit. And contrary to what the norm has become, the church is here to support, but not to be the substitute for the family. You see, God has not called us to be passive observers in our kids' lives. We're called to be intentional leaders. That's what we're talking about, that Proverbs 22:6, to train them up in the way that they should go, so that when they're old, they'll not depart from it. And so we need to communicate constantly the principles of God. Number 3, as parents, our priority is to commission our kids to pursue God and to commission them to pursue God. I want to invite you back to how Deuteronomy begins in verses 1 through 3. Look at how it began in verse 1. It says, "Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God." Listen to this. "You and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments which I commanded you all the days of your life, that your days may be long." In verse 3, "Hear therefore, O Israel, be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you in a land flowing with milk and honey." Did you notice Moses' reasoning for commanding Israel to do everything that we've looked at so far, of having a compassion or committing them to a compassion or a passion for God and communicating God's principles to them? Why is all of that necessary? It's so that the legacy of faith and faithfulness to God would continue. You and your son and your son's son, that there would be this legacy of faith that would just continue down the line. And do you remember how at the beginning we gave that spoiler alert? I said that our top priority as parents is to gradually transfer our children's dependence away from us so that it comes to rest completely on God. You see, ultimately our goal is not control, it's to commission them. We're not to possess them. It's not possession, but preparation. See, God didn't give us children so that we might merely keep them under our wing forever. He gave them so that we could train them up. We could point them toward His purpose. And then we can release them for His glory. I love the imagery that we find in Psalm 127. It's called a song for those ascending to Jerusalem. It's written by Solomon. Look at the words of that with me. Here's what it says. It says, "Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It's useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat. For God gives rest to those He loves," or to His loved ones. You see, Solomon is talking about, those are all examples, they're metaphors, which speak of the reality that if God is not in ultimate control, if we are taking a greater control on the things around us than is God, if God's not in ultimate control, then all our efforts are useless. Solomon continues. It says, "Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from Him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hand. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them. He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. I love that metaphor. I love that idea of children being like arrows in the warrior's hand. And just think about that for a minute. What are arrows meant for? I can tell you what they're not meant for. That they're not meant to stay in the quiver forever. No. Arrows are crafted, and then they're aimed, and then they're released. You see, I think we must recognize that our kids, really, they're not ours to keep. They're really God's from the beginning, and true Christian parenting is about understanding the joy, maybe the sorrow, and equally the responsibility of being called to steward their souls for just a little while before returning them to Him. And see, this means we raise them up with a bigger picture in mind. Not just raising kids. I mean, I love to see, sometimes it makes me mad, when I see myself and my girls, they get a little sarcastic, and it's hard for me because I'm like, you really shouldn't be saying that, but that's probably what I would say. And I love to see myself in my kids, but my goal is not just to raise them to be more like me, but to help them to become just like Jesus. See, it's tempting for me to build my own legacy and my own kids, to live vicariously through their success, or trying to protect them from every sorrow or keep them from stumbling. But the goal is not to raise trophies to put upon my shelf, but to shape servants for God's kingdom. You see, our homes should be a launching pad. That we would launch our kids into service for God's kingdom, and not just the landing zone. So what spiritual legacy will your kids carry because you led them there? See, at the end of our lives, I think about this sometimes. Think about what will be said when we get to the end of life. They write, what's that thing called? The obituary. And they write out all your accomplishments and all these things that you did. And of course, it's almost like Facebook world, because you get the very best of that person in that moment. Well, what's going to be remembered? I'll tell you what won't be remembered. Nobody's going to write about the size of your house. Nobody's going to write about the car you drove, how color-coordinated your sock drawer was. We're going to be remembered for the faith we lived, the truth we taught, the love we modeled. I think and wonder sometimes. It could be that your greatest contribution to the kingdom may not be in something that you do personally, but in someone you raise personally. You see, parenting is not about control. It's about cultivating a passion for God, about communicating the principles of God, about commissioning our children to pursue God. It's about the slow and faithful handoff of spiritual dependence from our hands to His. As a church, let's raise them up. Not merely to know about God, but to love Him, to follow Him, and to serve Him with all of their heart. Today's next best step, let's learn to prioritize what really matters most.